The opinions expressed on the Custody Queen show are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for personal, professional legal advice. The persons discussed are fictional and not based on actual clients.
Thought it was love, had kids in between. You can count on us with the Custody Queens.
Good morning and happy Saturday. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday morning with Sam and myself. And we are super excited to be here with all of our Go Country awesome fans and listeners. Last week, we spoke with Marilyn, Mars Camacho, and Leslie Ljuvet from the Mars and Les Show about navigating Hollywood, breaking stereotypes, and creating their own platform. Today, we're shifting to something a little bit more personal.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for being here again.
Thank you for having us back.
Thank you.
Love this.
So as family law attorneys, Kristen and I deal with divorce every single day. But what we don't always talk about is what divorce looks like through the eyes of a child and what it looks like when your parents get divorced. So if it's okay with you, we'd like to go through some of your guys' personal experiences relating to that.
Sure.
I gotta go. I'm just kidding.
And considering that statistics show that 40 to 50% of first marriages end in a divorce, and that number is increasing with second and third marriages, I think this is even a more important topic.
Yes. And a little background with me, I have parents that are divorced too. So this, for me, is kind of something that I'm not only very empathetic towards, but part of why being a family law attorney means so much to me. Just seeing the layer and understanding how it feels to be maybe not a party to the actual divorce, but an ancillary, if that makes sense. So before we get into that, we're going to do our CQ Talk box where we do a little icebreaker. And I'm sure all of you have heard this, or if you haven't, it is kind of a fun thing going around social media, the listen and we don't judge but segment. So I'm going to start with Kristen, put her in the hot seat first. And it's going to be funny because it's Kristen and you probably got a lot of them. So
I was just going to say I have so many that I
If you need to give a couple, please, because we'll repeat it. So we listen and we don't judge.
I don't use a towel when I get out of the shower.
We listen and we don't judge.
And that was super PG.
And if you have another one, we'll come back around to you, Kristen. And if you have a more spicy one for the audience, let us know, okay? All right, Mars. We listen and we don't judge.
I sometimes litter outside of my car when I'm driving.
We don't judge.
We listen
I didn't know that.
and we don't judge.
Okay.
All right, Les. We listen and we don't judge.
Okay, when I'm on my period, I just like to free bleed because I hate wearing like tight shit. So I just like to just relax and, let Mother Nature take its course sometimes, after the shower. I have like this She knows. I just it's like part of like Earth, right? So I just like do this like a spiritual
Part of
thing for
Earth?
me. Yeah, when things didn't get so domesticated, women were walking around and just, doing the same thing that I'm doing. So I don't do it.
We listen and we don't judge.
I can't believe I just said that. It's gonna be on the air. Oh God.
Don't worry, Kristen will get a good one for you on the end.
All right. Yeah. Okay, Sam. We listen and we don't judge.
We listen. Okay, I haven't even thought about it for myself. There's plenty to judge. What do I do that's weird? I sleep on the couch more than I sleep in my own bed.
Oh.
Because I think it's something about being a little kid. My mom always wanted me to go to bed because she wanted a break, So you fall asleep on the couch. That was like a big no-no. So now as an adult, I love to sleep on the couch. There's nothing greater to me than coming home and saying, I'm an adult. I'm going to go ahead and put some tunes on, probably some cartoons, and fall asleep. So that's
cute.
At least you're not watching those weird cats you watch.
Oh, dude, she's been hazing me about Meerkat Manor for like 10 years. It's a
On the
great
couch.
show. It hasn't been
We
around
don't
for a
judge.
while.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
Kristen,
listen,
yeah,
we don't judge.
All right, Kristen, let's get one more for you.
Okay, all right. I
We
do
listen.
a lot of really stupid things, but I own it, and I think that's something that's fun about me. So, I put charcoal mask on my face that was toothpaste, and then I was like, oh yeah, this feels great. It's tingling. And then realized it started burning, and then it was toothpaste. But one I did recently was I, Nair, it's the lotion that helps dissolve hair in, certain areas. And, like most women, we have a little bit of some upper lip hair that we need to kind of just knock out real quick. And I grabbed one of the bottles, not reading the title, but it was a stronger for different areas of the body. And I put it on my lip, and then I put a little bit on my chin. And I literally burned like the top layer of my face off. And I also left it on for like an hour, which you're also not supposed to do. But I was kind of like, fast and furious, let's go. And then it looked like I had a chocolate milk stain all over my whole face because I literally burned my skin off.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
So I don't recommend that, but I appreciate you guys not judging.
One thing about Kristen is she's not gonna read the directions.
Oh yeah,
she's
optional. Recommendation.
She wouldn't even let someone read them to her.
It's like expiration dates. It's a
I don't do
recommendation.
that
Something
either.
she would do.
Yeah,
She
I
doesn't
don't read any.
read.
I don't
Same.
even read emails. She's like, "Did you read the email?" Like, no,
she's-
not really.
Worse.
my
It drives me
gosh.
nuts.
Me
It drives
too.
me nuts.
Yeah.
It's like-
We're very similar. I'm like,
It's
10,821. Mass delete.
She'll mass delete it, and I'm like,
And she's over there like convulsing.
Literally, I'm just like, why is this email like 3 pages long when it could have been like half a page or like
Yeah.
a paragraph?
Yeah.
And then I think, well, Sam's on the same email, so
Yeah.
if it's really important, she'll make sure she brings it up to me.
very true. All right. So getting into kind of the family law aspect of it, Mars or Les, whoever wants to go first, can you tell me a little bit about your experience, your childhood experience dealing with your family and what that looked like?
I come from a big family. I have 7 siblings, and I'm like the middle child. My parents didn't actually divorce, but they did separate. And this happened probably when I was I was probably like a year or 2 out of college. And so I was living at home, I was working, and I think we all kind of knew what was happening in the house as far as like, my father and his infidelity at the time. And, when he ended up leaving, it was a shocking moment, I think, for everyone. And he was gone for several years, I think during that time, there was a lot of resentment. I held a lot of resentment against my father because I loved him so much. And I still do. May he rest in peace, but it's like, I kind of consider myself a little bit like daddy's girl, And so for me, it was like the ultimate betrayal, not just to my mother. I felt like it was the ultimate betrayal to all of us. And I think more than anything during that time, it was like, all right, we got to take care of mom. We all have to like pull up, our big boy and our big girl shoes and boots and like, we have to take care of mom. So everyone was chipping in to pay the bills. It was like we weren't going to depend on my father, even though my dad was still giving her some money. But it was more like, let's do everything we can to make sure that mom is comfortable and she doesn't have to stress, because she already has this thing on top of her right now that she's dealing with the man that she was married with and had 8 children with. Like, that's heavy. That's a lot to deal with. And thinking that you're going to be with that person for the rest of your life. And then I have younger siblings, so I also had to kind of be present for my little brother and my little sisters and make sure that, big sis, if you guys need something, I'm there. You need me to go to school, for whatever's going on in school. If my dad couldn't go, obviously, I was there, So I found myself taking on a lot more responsibility.
I feel like you had to grow up a little bit.
I had to grow up a lot faster. Yeah. So that was one of the biggest things. And then eventually my father came back and my mom was gracious enough to forgive him, but it was never the same. They just remained partners, companions,
right,
until my father's death. And that taught me a lot about resilience. It taught me a lot about loyalty, right? And sometimes how we're loyal to a fault. But it also taught me about unconditional love, and forgiveness.
Right.
And sometimes there's a greater calling to a relationship, right? Sometimes it's not just about love, it's also about family, So I think for me, there was a lot of lessons that I learned throughout that process. But I do feel like it also affected me personally when it came to my relationship with men.
Yeah.
And being I wasn't as trusting, and I'm still not as trusting. it takes a lot. So I think it definitely had a ripple effect through all of my siblings, you know?
Do you feel like you didn't necessarily become closer with your siblings, but you guys kind of all share that experience to some extent?
We did. I think like some of us did get closer. It's just crazy because we have such a age difference from like the oldest to the youngest, you know, like,
What's the age difference?
whew, it's about a good 20 year.
Wow.
Yeah, almost 20 years. Yeah, from my oldest brother, I believe is what, 56, 57. My youngest sibling is 32.
So they were processing the information in
processing.
different ways and
Yeah.
different aspects that can be. Because
Yeah.
I'm 13 years older than my youngest brother. And my parents are still married, you know. I think, but every marriage, I've been with my husband for almost 20 years. And it's you grow and you change. And when you just said that it's about so much more than love, it really is. Because, you know, love is it changes and it evolves throughout the relationship, but you don't have that lust or that, you know, that feeling that you had 20 years ago. I mean, obviously that for the most part doesn't last, but you have to grow together.
1,000%. And I think that, you know, it's tough because even when your parents get old and it's like the roles reverse, you're now taking care of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I felt like some of my siblings still had that resentment with my dad, you know, and I think me personally, I had to go through my own process of forgiveness
Right.
and say, you know what, at the end of the day, though, he wasn't a bad father. You know, he didn't treat me bad. He was a good dad. He was the ultimate provider in our family, you know, and you know, he wasn't super affectionate, you know, but I knew he loved us. You know, I know he loved me, you know, and nobody's perfect. You know, at the end of the day, you just got to realize nobody's perfect. And what was going on with my parents, that's their business. That's their business, you know, and I had to also think about that and respect that. And as you get older, you think it's your business too, but it's really not. You know, you get angry. My dad would come over. We would give him an attitude. We would be mean to him sometimes, you know, and because you're holding all of this in and you don't know how to process. But as you get older, you realize like, no, that was something that was going on between them. And I can no longer carry this. I have to also let it go, you know.
Is there anything that helped you process some of this? Because, you know, some of it is growing up and things like that. At least that was my experience. But is there anything that helped you process it? Because it's such an important thing. Kristen and I divorce people for a living, right? And one of the biggest things that we're concerned about is children in general and the impact it has on them. And how do you, you know, mitigate the harm knowing that no matter what you do, their life is going to be changed and they're going to be materially impacted in some way, right? But is there anything that you did that helped you sort of process that or get through that time?
I think for me, it was work. I just threw myself into work. I threw myself into my creative work. I have a theater company in Chicago that I'm one of the co-founders of. And to this day, we're still thriving. And I threw myself completely into my work. And I think that was the way that I was able to process. I wasn't able to, I couldn't sit there and just sulk about it, just sit there and be upset. So I just went full force into every creative endeavor that I had, whether it was a play, whether it was producing, whether it was acting, whether it was directing. That's how I was able to just kind of get through it, you know, because I think that if we sit there and I'm a very emotional person, even though she'll probably beg to differ, but
that's why she won't text you back, because
I am emotional. I am. I know you don't think I am, but I am, you know? And for me, it's like, I will get depressed. I'll just replay the whole scenario in my head, like over and over again. And, I'll just wallow and be crying the whole day. So I know that about myself. So I have to do something to get myself out of it. And for me, it's work.
Yeah, I agree. It's, you know, you keep moving, even if it's a step at a time.
Yeah.
And at some point,
I wish I would have gone to therapy. I wish I would have known better. I'm in therapy now. So
I think
that counts.
You know, I think we could go around the room. We're huge therapy proponents. Everybody, therapist needs therapists, right?
Right.
And there's cases that when we're doing the consults and, you know, you can see it's a very traumatic case or very high conflict or there's a domestic violence component. A lot of times I won't even agree to take the case unless the person is going to therapy. Because one, I'm not a licensed therapist and I'm terrible at it. And I'm our hourly rate is significantly more.
Yeah.
And we try to define our role as attorneys, but I think you need a professional
Yeah.
to help navigate these types of issues.
1,000%. 1,000%.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And now I'm going to put you, Les, in the hot seat.
That's good. My parents are divorced. They did it when I was young, and I'm an only child, so essentially I kind of went through it by myself. It wasn't very easy. I can't deny. It was hard because I was going through puberty. I was a teenager, and it was like it was just like this long lasting divorce because they would break up and get back together, and then they would break up and get back together. And it was just like, just break up. Like there was points where I'd be like, Mom, just leave the man, you know? And it was just so, and my parents are young. They had me when they were 19. Right now they're 56. So they're very young. So at the time, they were my age. They were like 34,
Coming into their
35.
own.
So, and I'm looking at it like from my perspective, I'm like, wow, they were like so young, right? And they had this like teenager. So I didn't work. I turned to drugs. And that's when like my drug stuff started. And that was like really when things got really intense with drugs, because for me, I think I just detached myself and was like, this isn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think one day I was with my cousins and I showed up to the house and there was a police car. And then I like walked in and there was cops and they were all over my mom. And I was like, oh, fuck this. I'm done. I'm going to go get high. You know, I was just like, forget it. I don't care.
not happening.
I was like, I'm getting high, you know? So for like a while I was doing drugs and it was the beginning of self-discovery for me. That was like the true beginning of self-discovery. And it was the true beginning of like understanding life in a harder way and having to just have my own back.
Yeah.
And that's when like loving myself and starting that journey really happened for me, because I had to really hit rock bottom and understand that your parents cannot always have your back. It's almost impossible living in a society where it's so overstimulating. Your parents cannot always have your back. Your parents sometimes also need their parents back. And that's
Right.
when my mom needed her mom and my dad needed his mom, and they needed to be the little kids, right? In that. So it really opened up my eyes to what I wanted in a relationship, and it just molded what I wanted and I didn't want.
It's a really interesting point, too, because I think sometimes we forget that just because you're an adult or in your adult years that you've like grown to a level where the only thing you need to do is raise children. Like
Yeah.
you're still a work in progress and you're still figuring your own stuff out. But how were you able to sort of process it? And, you know, it sounds like you turned to some things for a while, but then I'm assuming you've turned out of that.
100%.
Right, yeah.
I'm sober. I don't do
Right.
drugs. I drink, but I don't do drugs. And sometimes I go 3 years without drinking. What happened was I went to jail, and that was the biggest turning point. I went to jail and I got caught for drinking and driving. And my parents were not like, they couldn't deal, right? Because they were going through their own stuff. So I remember I came from Cuba on a boat. So having to come here from another country, there's so much pressure on living the American dream and being successful. So, you know, that is like a point of no success. You're in jail. We just gave you freedom. Like what? So I remember just seeing my mom, because now they're really good friends.
Right.
And they own businesses
Love that.
together. So that's another thing, is like they're best friends. We're all best friends, all three of us. So we have the greatest relationship. We're a team now.
Oh, I love that.
They're just dating other people, but they work together. And they have each other's backs, and they have my back, and we have each other's back. So we have the most beautiful relationship. I love my parents so much. They're my best friends. When I saw the image of them like visiting me in jail, and I just saw them, oh my God, it broke my
The
heart.
disappointment.
I just saw them, and they were still trying to have my back, you know, and even seeing me, and I just saw the environment, and I looked around and I said, this is not who I am. This is not me, you know? So I started to turn to a more spiritual life. I just became very spiritual. And that's when I cut, like I moved to LA, I cut everything out. I cut friends, I cut everything. And I took a hard look, and I was like, what is really making me become this very toxic version of myself. And it's been a journey. I'm still learning. I'm still processing. I'm still learning how to communicate better. So spirituality changed my life. I went through like a detox program and got sober for a while. I didn't even drink. I got very paranoid to just falling back into that.
Yeah.
But it helped so much to see, although it was a hard time, I still learned so much from my parents because they became best friends.
Right.
And that's one of the greatest things is to see their friendship as an adult and understanding why it didn't work. But they have each other's backs now, undeniably. And
awesome.
it's so beautiful to see. But one little thing I will say is, right, they both got married the same year. They remarried again the same year. And they got another divorce, both of them. But my dad showed up at my mom's house. Even after they got a divorce, he showed up and he was like, don't marry this man. You know, be with me and like, don't marry this man. And my mom's like, no, I'm going to marry this man. So she married this man. And then he went and married this woman 3 months later. They both ended up in second divorces. But it was just such this fairy tale and the story and like the friendship. And I'm like, oh God, I don't want this, but it's still such a good movie, right?
It's a full 360.
It's such a great film. And they're still, you know, but I remember that day and I was like, oh my God, my dad, he can't believe he did that.
You know, I wish I see how much Sam and I have changed even as attorneys over the last decade. I remember early in my career, you know, we'll fight about everything. Everything is we're going to court. You know, we're going to threaten this, threaten that as attorneys. We have all these remedies. And you know what? If you're not going to be reasonable, we're going to take you to the cleaners. And then you know, I've had 3 kids and I also just think growing up, Sam and I growing up in the field, and now I have such a different approach with my clients because I truly wish that if we could put a panel together and show the parents that are in it right now going through divorce, you know, a whole bunch of maybe adolescents and now where they're at in their lives and they can kind of, you know, tell you what happened, what did I go through, what were the challenges. I think people might look at it a little bit differently. And I'm not saying divorce, it needs to be normalized. It's part of life, but there is a way to do it in a way that just doesn't affect kids for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
And that's what Sam and I have really dedicated our careers to, educating people that you can get divorced and it is normal and there shouldn't be a stigma. And when you get married when you're 22 and you're 40, you're a different person. But why do we have these kids that are in 9-year custody battles and litigation and turning on each other? It's like, you know, Sam and I will look at some of our cases and it's like, this kid, even when they're an adult, is going to deal with this trauma unless they get serious help for the rest of their life.
So unfair.
Yeah. And, you know, spending a lot of time in court is never beneficial. It's not. Sometimes it's needed. Sometimes if there's very serious safety issues, like you really have to, you know, step in and go to court. But by and far, I think people get lost in the fight and they spend a lot of money and a lot of time and they don't necessarily realize that there's a ripple effect on not just the 2 people that are divorcing, but their friends, their family, and most importantly, their children. So we try as much as we can to collaborate, to mitigate and shield children from the process.
That's the hardest. That was the hardest part for me is that long dragging back and forth. Like just break up, you know, just break up.
And even when you do break up, the court process can be 1, 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's a client, she's actually a very good friend of Sam and I's, but, you know, she hired us, you know, her daughter was a couple months younger than my daughter, and my daughter's almost 12. And, you know, we've done really good work for her and she's become genuinely one of our friends. And I think that case is different because there was a legitimate safety concern. But we don't want our clients to be in our lives, at least in that way for, you know, a decade. I don't want you, you know, using your kid's college fund or whatever it's for on attorney's fees. So I think Sam and I really, again, made it our mission to be like, okay, let's deal with the safety concerns and then let's prioritize. And you have to love your kids more than you hate your ex.
Yes.
That's just the bottom line. But thank you, ladies, so much for sharing your stories with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just for being here in general, it's been really nice to get to know you guys. I'm looking forward to your podcast.
Yeah, where can we find it? Where can we find your podcast?
So we have been shooting for a while now. We are looking to drop it at the end of this month.
We're gonna pitch. We're
it's
like
been
kind of
delayed
pitching
because we're
first.
pitching to networks with both of our teams, and so that's kind of where we're at. But we have already been dropping a lot of clips on our social media, so you can catch us on Instagram, The Mars and Les Show. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is also The Mars and Les Show, and the same thing on TikTok as well. So.
Well, we definitely will do the second this is over.
We absolutely. We have nothing else to do today, Kristen.
And
We
you'll
might have to have you guys as guests.
We would love to.
yes.
We would absolutely
Yeah,
love
we
that.
would love
but
that.
in all seriousness, thank you for hanging out with us, for sharing your stories. It
Thank
really means a
you.
lot to us just from a family law perspective specifically. It's what Kristen and I really are very passionate about. So thank you to our audience for joining us again on Go Country. And if anyone has questions for Kristen and I specifically related to family law, custody, or you just want to know what odd thing Kristen did last week, give us a call at 1-800-419-7772. That's 1-800-419-7772.
And thank you for listening and not judging. I love friends like that. And remember, let love rule.
Thought it was love, had kids in between. You